And welcome back to another episode here at the Culture and Sports Podcast. For those of you new to this channel, I'm Wesley Livingston,
I'm Mike Scaramella.
and we're your hosts. Our guest tonight, we have a very special guest tonight. What are we on our fourth or fifth episode?
Yes,
And our guests just keep getting better and better.
I know,
oh my
it's awesome.
goodness. Our guest tonight was Penn State's very first director of university's ethics and compliance and chief ethics and compliance officer. A Penn State graduate himself, earning a bachelor's degree in law enforcement, and then going on to get his Juris Doctorate from law school. A former special agent in the FBI, and formerly served on the board of directors for the U.S. Center for Safe Sport. That's only part of his exciting 40-year career. I'll leave the rest to him, Mr. Regis Becker. How you doing?
So we wanted to get
Thanks, Wesley. Thanks, Mike. Good evening. I'm actually still on the board of directors for the U.S. Center for Safe Sport.
Okay.
I was one of the inaugural board members, and I still serve on the board. I had previously served in an interim staff position as the interim CEO for 6 or 7 months, but other than that, I had no break in service as a board member of the organization since 2016, I think.
Oh wow, that's
Awesome.
That's awesome. And I think we definitely want to get into that, but we want to start with your passion for sports when you were younger and kind of how that kind of played a part in you getting to where you are right now. So you had a couple of sports that you were you played when you were younger. Do you want to kind of go into that and let us know the culture?
Yeah, it's funny. I was never much of an athlete. Always enthusiastic, but I was always the rec league guy, the intramural league guy. The neighborhood teams, and I really didn't play sports. Until really after college. I banged around a little bit in a Metro League football team while I was in college, but it was really weightlifting that got me interested in sports. I started doing some lifting at Penn State, and I was on the Penn State Powerlifting Club, and we competed around Pennsylvania. And when I graduated from Penn State, I walked on and tried out for the Pittsburgh. It was originally the Pittsburgh Ironman football team. It was a semi-pro team, and I played 6 or 7 years in semi-pro teams in Pittsburgh. They'd turn over every couple of years. They'd go bankrupt. Right?
So what position did you play? Because you're a bigger guy.
I was a guard.
Yeah, okay.
I was a
you look a
guard.
bigger
So
guy.
I remember the tryout. I had to, we had a little mini combine tryout. You had to run a 40 on a cinder track and bench presses with 225 pounds. And I remember the reason I remember so well is the very next day I had a powerlifting competition.
Oh no!
I had done, I had maxed out my bench press, and so the next day I had to do a squat after doing 40-yard sprints and drills. And the next day I had to squat, bench press, and deadlift at a local meet. So
that makes you committed for sure.
Again, never much of an athlete, but enthusiastic participant. And I played, I think 5 years of Pittsburgh Wolfpack and the Pittsburgh Colts, and we played. Baltimore, Buffalo, Columbus, Chambersburg. We played all over the East Coast as a team.
Oh, that's awesome. So you get to
But
travel
again, never
around.
really much of an athlete, and I competed in powerlifting the whole time. And later, I don't want to bore you too much, but I always was a barbell guy. But later, as I got closer to middle age, I changed from powerlifting to weightlifting, and just fell in love with the sport. And that's how I got involved with USA Weightlifting first as a master's level competitor, an old guy, in other words, and volunteer coach, and ultimately bought a gym and coached and ran a gym and was on the board of directors for USA Weightlifting. So it was sort of really my love of barbells and weight training that was my closest and favorites.
It's crazy how you got into that way, because I feel like a lot of the other people, like I got into weightlifting after sports. I got into sports and it's like, oh, you need to get bigger. So now you need to start lifting weights. In your case, you got big first, and then we're able to kind of just go from there.
It was a little opposite. Yeah, I just fell in love with lifting. I just enjoyed the whole idea.
That's awesome. So going into that, was that your main passion? I mean, like you said, you started at a younger age. You played sports at a younger age. Did you feel like a good team camaraderie? Like I know that you almost built your own team over there. So it's like
Oh yeah, you guys know how it works. It's really even neighborhood games, pickup games. I played a lot of rec basketball, summer league basketball, intramurals. Never good enough to make even a high school team. But I'll tell you, you just learn so much about people in those situations. That leadership comes to the fore. You see who ends up picking up, but it's not always the best athlete. The guys or girls that sort of come to the fore and get to be the ones that organize things and pick the teams and okay, they're all going to meet Saturday too. This rec center, whatever. You learn a lot early on about people. You learn what you're good at, what you're not good at, and it teaches you lessons that you can apply to the rest of your life, frankly.
Absolutely. Do you think that brought you into, into your law enforcement degree? Is that something like we were looking for like some team camaraderie and you're like, hey, look, I want to get into something that's, a team effort, maybe something like that to get you into it? Or
Yeah, I think it was just always part of my personality. I always wanted to be, like everybody else. I love the heroes of my youth, the cowboy shows, the superheroes.
Yeah.
We all grew up on that stuff,
Absolutely.
right? And I wanted to be a do-gooder. I wanted to be a guy that was the answer, not the problem, so I really gravitated to law enforcement. And that's why I picked that major at Penn State. As an undergrad there, my first couple of years, I didn't pick a major, and then I saw a couple of FBI agents came to talk to one of our classes, and I thought, that's pretty cool. I like these guys. Maybe I'll shoot to be in the FBI someday. And so if I hadn't declared my major by law enforcement, then I did after that session, and that became kind of a goal of mine after that.
Was Penn State always the school that you dreamed of going to?
No, I was actually a pretty lousy high school student, and I love Penn State to this day because they took a chance on me. I was actually admitted to one of their Commonwealth campuses on academic probation, essentially. I forget what they called the program, but I needed to get a 3.0 to stay in school after my first year, and because I had applied to schools late, as I said, my grades weren't very good in high school, and so I was delighted they took me even at extension campus, and then after a couple of years, I transferred to State College and went to their main campus in University Park, Pennsylvania, and spent 2 more years there, and I graduated from Penn State then. But it wasn't a long-term dream. It was just circumstances were fortuitous that they were looking for
It worked out that
people
way.
for their campuses. And
well, yeah, you went
I fit the bill.
you got into the right place. I mean, Penn State's an awesome place to be. I mean, we've always watched your football games and different sports events and things like that. I mean, so it's definitely prestigious. And
Yeah, the alums there are insane. You guys have
It's
everybody
crazy.
there.
They have the biggest, I think they call it the biggest dues-paying alumni association in the world, and you can't go anywhere without running into a bunch of Penn State alumni. When I was speaking a lot, when I was at the university working, and I'd go to conferences or something, I'd always ask how many Penn State grads in the audience, and there'd be a ton of hands going. I mean, you can't go anywhere without running into the We Are crowd, right?
Absolutely. Did you network with a lot of those guys right away? Like, because I know it's something that I didn't take as much advantage of as I wanted to when I was going to school. Where you really can't take it, work with people, and it's almost becomes a team with your alumni and things like that. How you could work with them and how you could do different things and
Yeah, they have a
expand.
great alumni association network. I fortunately didn't really need it that much. I had done an internship with the district attorney's office as a just an intern with a law enforcement degree. We needed to get 2 different internships for 8 credits or something, and so I ended up landing this internship at the DA's office investigations unit, and they kind of liked me, so they hired me part-time after my internship was over, and so I finished my degree while I was working part-time at the DA's office, and then got a couple other promotions, and ultimately right around when I graduated, in fact, I got appointed a detective in the unit, and that's how I got started. It was Penn State's internship that allowed me to get started with that job.
It's crazy how you went from that right back into Penn State. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit, but
It was not quite, it was pretty quick. It was not pretty quick. It was 30-some years later, I think.
Oh, really? So it was.
Yeah, I had my longest career was actually in corporate America. I did 8 years in law enforcement, 27 years in corporate America, and then the last 5 years I did at Penn State after the Sandusky scandal. I was hired to come there after Sandusky to set up a program, but yeah, we can get to all that if you like.
Oh, we definitely, I believe, will get to that. It's definitely interesting stuff. But I mean, when you left the FBI and went into your corporate career, is there something that drove you to do that in particular? Just a good opportunity from maybe somebody that you knew?
Yeah, I had been in law enforcement 8 years. I was 30-ish, and the FBI is a great organization. They pick great people, but it was still the government, and I was looking for just a different kind of I shouldn't say less bureaucratic, because corporate America is bureaucratic too, but it was
not quite as.
The federal government's really bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And I was probably going to end up in New York City as an agent.
Nah.
So I knew I was going to be transferred soon. So I had worked a case with a Fortune 500 company that no longer exists, but called Union Carbide, when I was a county detective, and they were looking for an investigator. So they recruited me when I was just a baby FBI agent. I barely had a cup of coffee with the FBI. I was there, 3 years or so. And so I left early and went to Union Carbide as an investigator, special investigator in their internal audits group, actually. And that's how I got my intro to corporate America.
Nice. Did you enjoy that right away? Was that something that you
Yeah,
started?
it was a tough transition. Everyone that comes out of law enforcement, one of the challenges you have is you no longer have the gun, the badge, the search warrant, the arrest warrant. You have to, work a lot more creatively in developing information, making cases, so to speak. And so it's a transition for everybody. And corporate is different. Their goals obviously are different when you're investigating, malfeasance or some sort of misconduct against the corporation. You're not looking to prosecute people necessarily. You're looking to get facts.
Right.
And then you determine whether that person needs to be disciplined or terminated, or whether there's restitution involved. And then at the end of all that, you decide, was a crime committed, and if so, should we present that to the district attorney's office or to the U.S. attorney's office to see if they want to prosecute it. So it's a very different consideration. When you get done, when you complete the investigation, it's evaluate the facts, and then what do we need to do as a corporation? One, from a human resource matter, do we need to discipline this person? Two, what are the weaknesses in our internal controls that allow this to happen? And so you have an internal control consideration to determine, how can we prevent this? Why did this happen? And then third, is this something we should go to the authorities with? So is there a moral obligation for us to turn this over to the organized law enforcement authorities to pursue further?
Yeah, I can definitely see that being. Obviously, it's important for every company, but you have to. I feel like if you don't have that person that can keep things in line like that, and they don't have you worked out perfectly because you had the FBI skills before you really went into that, so you had some background going into it.
Investigative skills and interrogative skills.
So it must have helped you just tremendously, just getting in there and like knowing where to look right away, because I know that's a lot of
Yeah, but there's the challenge is different because that's when I went and got an MBA, because I realized that there was not I had a law degree by then, but I did not business wasn't my major, so I thought I needed to learn more about business. So fortunately, back in those days, organizations would pay for you to get higher degrees. Nice. So I ended up getting an MBA from a local school, and that helped me understand a lot better about the business environment and what they were trying to achieve and how they were going about it, and financial documents, etc. So, but you're right. At the end of the day, it's human conduct, right? It's human behavior. Is it? And then the big question is this just a one-off? Is this just misconduct by this person who, for whatever reasons, went?
Or is it a cultural thing?
Or do we have a real problem here?
Yeah.
Is it deeper than that?
Have you
culture or the controls?
Have you come across a lot of situations where the culture for some companies were quite a bit off, and you had to kind of put it fully together, where it's not just like one or two things, where it's just like it ended up going into some investigation that you had no idea it was going that way?
And no, I was fortunate because I always worked for companies that had pretty good cultures, and they really encouraged the proper behaviors, and so that's why they hired people like me. But I've had friends and colleagues who work for organizations, and I won't mention any names, but they felt that these companies were willing to maybe look the other way a little bit when a classic example is you have one of your top performers in sales, say, and they're cheating on their expenses or something, doing well, it's not costing the company much money, and
this
they're really
person's bringing in more money than they're spending. Yeah.
So maybe we'll give them a slap on the wrist. And fortunately, I never worked for a company like that. It was they were always pretty good. And you talk about culture, that creates the culture, because if you fire somebody for stealing somebody's lunch in a factory, a low-level employee who does something stupid and steals something or takes home some company goods, and you fire them, but then you ignore the manager or the senior salesperson who's cheating in a much bigger way because they're more important to the company, that really sends a message and creates a culture that you don't want in the organization. So,
and people are going to notice. And people are going to notice that a little bit more.
Organization that supported doing the right thing at all levels.
Yeah, and I feel like definitely people will notice that more at the higher level. So you get somebody that slides on the higher level, everybody lower is going to be like, oh well, if they're sliding with it,
Exactly.
Why not?
Exactly.
So yeah, that makes it difficult.
When you see the mayor going to a party without a mask on, but everyone else in the city has to wear the mask.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
You have to walk the talk.
Yes, definitely.
When you ended up making that transition over into Penn State, working under ethics and compliance and as the chief ethics and compliance officer over there, where did you see you took most of kind of your techniques? Did you see yourself more in the FBI hat, or did you see yourself more in like the corporate compliance officer methods to
No,
to
it
Penn
was
State
much
over
more
there?
corporate compliance officer. It was very collaborative, Wesley. It was, I wasn't like the Lone Ranger that rode in on my horse to save Penn State. They had already made the commitment to make this right.
Okay.
One of the things they did that was different than some of the other scandals you see is they accepted, they got a penalty from the NCAA. There was, there was the free report that had a lot of recommended improvements they make, and they accepted all of that and said, we're going to make this, we're going to take these recommendations seriously. We're going to make these changes. We're going to build an organization to help us be the kind of organization we know we are and we can continue to be. And so they did that. They really were committed to it, and they one of those recommendations was bring in someone like me as an ethics and compliance officer. And so I had great support, and it was far from a one-man show. That was everybody from the president of the university, the football coaches, the athletic director. Everyone was supportive. The board, it was interesting. There was an interesting dynamic, and I'm not really talking out of school here, but the board was an interesting dynamic because a lot of them felt very strongly that Joe Paterno had been treated unfairly. He was terminated, and they thought that he was sort of a scapegoat. Sandusky was the real bad guy, and that Coach Paterno had done so much good for the university. He was treated unfairly, and then, unfortunately, a couple months later, he was dead. He died of cancer.
Wow.
So there was a little bit of resentment from some of the board members about that Coach Paterno didn't get treated all that fairly. But that was something we worked through and worked with them on, and they were largely supportive of the changes we made as well.
And I feel like
no one ever agrees 100%. When you're putting in a compliance program, you're always going to have people that don't like certain things, and we don't need that, and that's overkill, and we don't want to create a Gestapo here. You're always going to hear those things. So that's a normal part of any organization, especially starting up a function like this. But Penn State gave me tremendous support. We had a good team. All the other department heads from the academic side and the business side of the university, the athletic department, they were supportive, and they helped us work to implement all the recommendations from the free report.
Well, they definitely did the right thing. I mean, they came back. Obviously, they put it in. They didn't wait, which is good. A lot of people will wait a while, and then all of a sudden, they'll start a program after something else happens. In this case, I feel like they got it done right away. Joe Paterno, that's I mean, it is what it is. But at the same time, sometimes you have to make an example of people if maybe they knew something was going on or they may have heard something. I mean, it's a tough situation. Not everybody's going to agree with anything at any time.
It's hard to say, Mike, but you'll notice that in any organization, whether it's I'll leave the government out because who knows how they make decisions, but certainly in business and in most major institutions, when there's a major scandal like that really impacts the entire organization, the leader has to go.
Right.
And Coach Paterno, as great as he was as an individual and the things he did, it happened on his watch.
Right.
So whether he knew about it or he didn't know about it, I think the thinking was, and it happens all the time in corporate America, maybe the CEO did nothing wrong at all, but if there's a major scandal, the top of the house has to go. So I think that's what happened. And some people, again, resented that, but some people resented what happens in the corporate world too.
Yeah, well, and sometimes those people slide, and then just like you said before, it creates that culture. Like, oh well, last night he didn't say anything, so if we let that slide, it could create a bad culture just in general.
Yeah, exactly. So. And it makes it easier to implement some of the changes as well when you change leadership at the top.
Right, because it's not so much this is how we do it, and it's this, and this, rather than
right. You're not tiptoeing around the previous leader. Yeah.
Right, and it's tough for a lot of those guys because a lot of them, they've been there for a very long time, and it's like you step into that position and it almost feels uncomfortable sometimes to be like, oh well, we should be doing this and this and this, and you feel like you're stepping on their toes, but it's something that needs to get done. So it's like,
yeah, exactly.
And I kind of want to know, how were your feelings going into your stint at Penn State, working there, knowing your history, spending time there, dealing with the Sandusky situation? How did you feel going into the situation? Was it more of like, I'm glad it's me going in there and trying to help fix the situation? Was it more like, oh, it sucks. It has to be. It's this school, but I'm glad it's me still. How'd you kind of feel going into?
I was excited, Wesley. I really enjoyed the challenge. And they were, as I said, they made it easy for me to get acclimated. I had no prior higher ed background. Higher ed management is really different from corporate America, where I had spent 27 years.
Okay.
So, it's a very collaborative environment. You have to, get a bunch of people to say yes before you do anything. It's not,
which is always fun.
The boss says do this, and everybody says, okay, boss. And in academia, it's a much more collaborative environment. Everybody debates it, they discuss it, everyone gets a vote. So that was a new environment for me, and I had to learn pretty quickly that you had to be collaborative. You couldn't just issue edicts. We did issue some policies, but we worked those policies through very collaboratively with the faculty and the other staff. We got lots of input, and it was a team. It was the general counsel, it was the CFO, even the president, and everyone was involved in looking at these changes we were trying to make and putting a compliance program together. And everybody agreed. New training we were putting in. Nobody likes to do training, right? Especially in a higher education, the faculty, what are you trying to teach us? We're all PhDs.
Yeah, we are.
So we had to sort of tiptoe around that a little bit and get their buy-in. Try to make it time efficient. Can't just layer on a bunch of hours of training. So it was a different environment, and really I grew a lot, Wesley. I learned a lot in 5 years there. Made some good friends, and I think we made an impact. And it was totally different than, not totally, but a lot different than my corporate experience. So I was very glad I did it. Glad I had the experience.
So who actually starts that? So say if you are going to implement a program like this, it obviously starts at the top. You said there's collaboration, things like that. Does it come from one specific person at first? We're like, hey, look, we need to get this done, and then everybody kind of jumps on like, yeah, you're right, we should start doing this.
Well, I joke, that I had the benefit of a scandal. It's hard to come into an organization that's running on all 8 cylinders. Everybody's doing great. They have no misconduct matters, no major misconduct matters. Then you got a tougher fight to get everybody to buy in. Why are we doing this? We're a good organization. We don't steal. We don't lie. We don't cheat. Why are we putting these ethics programs in, or these compliance programs? At Penn State, they had already acknowledged that they were going to implement the free report recommendations. There was like 118 recommendations, and Penn State had put together a team of senior leaders that said, we're going to implement every one of these, and we're going to oversee the process. And so that was the group that I largely reported to and worked with as we implemented every one of those recommendations that the free report did. So obviously the president, though, had to be on board, and he was a terrific supporter, and the senior leadership all was supportive of that. So in some ways it was kind of easy to go into that environment. If it had been a much lesser problem, we might have had a little more trouble getting buy-in from everybody.
Yeah.
But these things, you'll notice when people add these organizations, a year before I went to Penn State, I don't know if you guys remember, Ohio State had Tattoo Gate. You remember the problems at Penn State? The athletes were trading sports memorabilia for free tattoos.
Yeah, exactly.
I do remember.
You're a little young, so you might not remember. What was the quarterback's name? Big, tall kid, Pittsburgh kid. He was implicated. A lot of these
not
guys
Ben,
were
right?
kids.
It wasn't Ben, right?
No. Ben went to a MAC school. This was Ohio State. Anyway, they started a similar program before Penn State did, and put a lot of resources into it. But they had a lot more buy-in because of that. An example, and I'm not trashing anybody, but Michigan, for instance, with the Nassar scandal, gymnastics problem, they were a little slow, and I'm not sure they've really bought in yet to acknowledge that this was an institutional problem, that they needed to make drastic changes, and they sort of fought. In my view, this is personal opinion, I don't want to insult anybody up there, but they didn't follow the path that Ohio State and Penn State did, and maybe they had the reasons why they did it the way they did, but they seemed to be a little bit resistant to change when the Nassar scandal broke. I think they considered he was sort of a U.S. Olympic Committee problem more than a Michigan problem.
Yeah.
Michigan State problem.
Michigan State, yeah. Let's see.
So, do you think that? So I say once you got into Penn State, did you ever collaborate with any other schools on any of these other programs? So like other ethics and compliance Guys, have you talked to those guys, implemented anything with anybody else? Or has it been kind of just
Absolutely.
focused on Penn State?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I was happy to learn that there was an organization that put on a higher ed compliance conference every year. So I went to that within 3 or 4 months of being at Penn State. I went to that conference and I started meeting my colleagues, and I'll tell you, they couldn't have been more supportive. Shared a lot of ideas with me, and then the interesting thing was in the coming couple of years, then because we were implementing all these recommendations from the free report, many schools were calling Penn State and asking for, what are you guys doing? How are you doing it? There's lots of, nuance to putting these programs together, and lots of little programs that you have to get your hands around. And so we have made great friends and collaborators with universities around the country. And then formally, we established an organization. It wasn't really an organization. It was just the gang from the Big Ten. The Big Ten has 14 schools in it. I think 10 of us had similar positions.
Oh,
and
nice.
so we would meet a couple of times a year. Once we'd meet in Chicago sometimes at the Big Ten offices, and then I think we met a couple of times at conferences. But we try to meet at least once a year, the Big Ten compliance officers, and compare notes and share problems and commiserate, the things you usually do with your colleagues, right? So that was interesting. So we got to know, and we could say, well, Iowa's doing this, or Ohio State's doing this, or I talked to the guy out at Illinois, and they've got an interesting program, or there's a new training program being put together at Northwestern. So you just share ideas, and so it was really helpful.
And then were you able to implement
mental health too?
Yeah, were you able to implement a lot of that stuff at Penn State that you learned and kind of collaborated with those guys? Is it?
Well, as I said, we had a blueprint already. We had the free report, but parts of implementing that would be, how are we going to do this particular thing, or how are we going to schedule our education? So we did benchmarking. It would sometimes validate what we wanted to do, and sometimes it would give us a new twist on what we were trying to do. So I wouldn't say as much as we got the general idea from them as we got some nuance and some implementation ideas from our colleagues at other schools.
Nice.
Recently, wanted to bring this up. Recently, it's been known that players are now able to get paid off their name, image, and likeness. I just kind of wanted to know, as an ethics and compliance officer at the time you were, what kind of talks did you and your team have about the situation? And then secondly, what kind of other programs do you think would have to be created, to kind of support this this new implemented,
without these guys flying off the chain?
I'm glad I'm not there now, Wesley. I'm glad I'm out of that business. But it was interesting. The Bannon case, UCLA case, is where this all came from, right? There was the basketball player at UCLA. I think it was a forward named Ed Bannon, and the NCAA or somebody was using his image and likeness, and he's the one who brought the lawsuit that ultimately led to this ruling that said athletes can use their image and likeness.
Yeah, if you're going to use it, then why can't I? Technically,
exactly.
And they're making
from an ethical standpoint, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was just going through the courts when I was there, so we didn't spend a lot of time talking about that. I'll tell you, the thing that sent a shot across the bow when I was there was just in its infancy, was the whole gambling issue. Previously you could only gamble in Las Vegas and then New Jersey, sports betting, and everything else was through.
And then you get a cell phone.
Crime.
And then you get a cell phone, and then you could bet from anywhere.
You see your bookie. You get out of the bar and you see your bookie.
Exactly.
And that's how you bet. And so we always were a little bit worried about. Everyone's worried about sports betting, right? There's been a few scandals over the years. Nothing major, certainly recently. But when they started talking about legalizing sports betting, that started people thinking. And again, I was gone before it became finally implemented, but I'm sure that's added some wrinkles to the compliance programs.
Oh man!
Now, because as you guys know, it's really easy to drop a pass, miss a free throw, not even lose the game. Say that, it's a 10-point spread, and field goal kicker misses a field goal, and they win by 8 or something.
Yeah.
Lose somebody a lot of money.
You've got to have some kind of program to at least train on that, to educate people, to warn them, to keep them thinking about those things. And I think most kids are, 99% of kids are absolutely honest.
No.
But every once in a while, you're going to have a problem with somebody whose family's maybe in big trouble. So actually, the image and likeness thing is kind of good because it allows top athletes to make some money.
Right. And
The university wouldn't have made it anyway, frankly.
yeah.
It's new money. You know, car dealers are paying a kid to do an advertisement for them. It makes good sense, and I think maybe that way it actually takes some of the pressure off the gambling temptations, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Unfortunately, image and likeness is only going to be your top guys. You're not going to have
Right. You're gonna have maybe
Yeah.
2 or 3 guys on your you know.
that third string
Big Ten
guard.
team.
He's not getting
No.
anybody.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying him to do anything.
Yeah, so you're not thinking it's going to change like the dynamic of conferences now. You're not seeing these smaller conferences going to start making a play now, or
You never know. You
question.
never know. Look at the SEC's doing now. They're
Yeah.
poaching people from the Big 12.
Yeah, they got.
Who knows who's going to be in what league next year? You know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what's going to happen with the ACC, the Big Ten, you know, the Mountain West or whatever? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. And then the athletes, you know, how's that going to affect recruiting?
Yeah.
Certainly, everybody wants to be on national championship games, and you know, so the SEC's, you know, other than Clemson and Ohio State, the SEC usually has two of the top teams in the playoffs in football every year. So it's going to have some impact on that. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, it will be fun to kind of see what happens. Especially, I mean, because it could be a really good thing for you know the ethics and everybody, but it could also sway you in a bad direction where you're like, okay, well, you know, it could keep people up or keep people on track by saying, hey, look, you know, if you mess up, you're going to lose this, and they will. But at the same time, you also got kids making more money, and who knows what 19 or 18-year-old guy is going to do. You know, leaving the game and going out to a party or doing whatever. I mean, that could totally blow everything for them and in the future. You know, so it's a slippery slope. I feel like for some people.
We've seen that a good percentage of athletes end up, you know, broke after they retire after a year or two, or you know,
If they even make the league,
if they
right?
even make the league, yeah.
You know, fortunately, big schools like Penn State and maybe most of the schools have programs. When you first get in there, they talk to these kids about the dangers of, you know, all the temptations and the problems that they may encounter. But they also talk about the likelihood of making a living at that game, you know, which is very, very small.
Yeah.
Even at schools like Penn State and Ohio State, how many guys make the league every year? 2 or 3,
Yeah.
4 or 5, maybe is a big year, right? But I'll tell you, you know, Mike and Wesley, the bigger issue I think with the image and likeness is, you know, we're talking about culture, right? You guys are all about culture.
Right.
When you have athletes that are more worried about their brand than about the team, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but let's face it, if someone thinks they can make money by standing out more, and not just on the field, but standing out generally, you know, on social media, and I want to build my brand, so my image and likeness payments, I'm going to make a lot more money, and I can continue this after I'm out of school if I build a big enough Instagram following or whatever.
Yeah.
So you see a little bit of that in the pros now. You know, there's been some, you know, here in Pittsburgh, little minor things with Juju Smith-Schuster, their wide receiver. He's got a big Instagram following, and he was doing little gimmicks every week. He was jumping on the opponent's logos in the field every week for his Instagram followers, filming it, and then, you know, putting it on his Instagram. And it led to a little bit of tension. And they had another young receiver who was getting advice from Juju about building his brand. You know,
Oh boy,
it's a different story with pros. But imagine you start doing that in college. If you're a sophomore guard, and will that change the way you perform, or will it change the way you behave off the field? Will it undermine cohesiveness in the team by you showboating on social media to try to build your image and build your brand up? So you're going to get more followers, and you can sell more, of yourself time-wise. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at for the next 5 to 10 years.
And how would that work? So say you go to a school who's is sponsored by like Adidas, and you have a player on that team who goes out there and gets an endorsement from, you know, Puma or something. Can he go out there and wear Pumas on the field on game day on Saturdays?
I don't think so. There's a contract, right? So
No.
Nike and Adidas and the big Reebok and so forth, they pay the universities, they pay the schools,
right.
and there's a legal contract that can be enforced. So schools have to wear, and they have to wear the logos in a certain way, and they have to, you know, there's very strict performance contingencies in the contracts that they can only use the logos in the following ways, and they have to use that. So I think it would be difficult to do it on the field.
Okay.
Off the field is a different matter. If, you know, it's going to be interesting to see if a player is hyping, Puma or something.
That's a really
But
good
the school's
point.
an Adidas school or a Nike school, and he's on Instagram showing off his new, whatever shoes and talking about how great they are. That's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. And again, it goes to the cohesiveness of the team. Is that going to create cultural problems within the organization?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe not. But it's an interesting question, Wesley. I think you might be onto something.
And every year, you're gonna have every few years you're gonna have different guys. So I mean, I've been on teams. I played baseball, football my whole life. So I've been on teams where we have the individuals, and they're just the individuals. And it really they might be doing great, but at the same time, like all the teams that we've done well, every games, all the seasons that we've done really well, we've worked together as a team. Nobody really went out of their way to stand out. Everybody brought each other up, and I feel like you
Right.
have that culture in a team. I feel like that's good, and I feel like that's a lot of coaching as well. Because
Right.
I had coaches that were like, "Hey, I'm not going to deal with this. Like, you're not going to do this because if you are, you're not going to play." And I feel
Right.
like sometimes that's needed for some of those guys that are just kind of getting into it, especially the guys that are starting to make money with all this stuff.
Exactly. It's interesting that one of the challenges before, and maybe it still is a big challenge. I know some of the AAU basketball club programs, they've got a lot of shoe money sponsorship in there,
Yeah,
and I think there's been at least some. You had the one FBI case a couple of years ago, and there's been some noise already about coaches not unlike your coach who was all about the team and doing things. They were working maybe for the betterment of the athletes, maybe for the betterment of the club, but really influencing, say, recruitment decisions based on their shoe sponsor. So if you're an AAU basketball club and Nike pays for all your shoes and maybe helps pay your expenses to travel the tournaments, and there's 5 schools recruiting you, and 2 of them are Nike schools and 2 are Adidas or something. That club coach has a big influence, and that maybe if Nike's not very ethical about it, and I shouldn't pick on Nike. I'm not picking on Nike.
Yeah,
Let's
they're
say
just-
shoe company A
Yeah.
has somebody representing them that isn't that ethical. They will try to use their influence with that club team to get you to go to their school, to Club A's, to Shoemaker A's sponsored school.
that's a
We've
good point.
seen some allegations like that in the past. And obviously there's also been allegations that money changes hands. But that's another interesting thing. The shoe money is big in basketball. The big shoe companies, they pay for those AAU clubs where the LeBrons of the world, get noticed first when they're 13, 14, 15 years old. They're playing on these AAU teams. And they're all sponsored by shoe companies. The good ones are.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they're either coached by an ex-NBA player or a current
somebody's got connections.
NBA player.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that.
So
Yeah, you're right. That could definitely influence, and who knows if the coach is getting a little kickback from that. Say, hey, look, this guy wants to go
No
here,
question, if you could deliver this kid to shoe company A's, ABC University, there's a little something in it for you.
Absolutely.
So I'm just thinking like a cop. I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody.
No, well, hey, that's what you got to do, because otherwise, you got to get
These are
in front
risks,
of these
right.
problems.
These are the risks you have to think about.
Yeah, you got to get in front of them, otherwise they're going to happen. People aren't going to know
you
what
have
to
to think
do.
about those things and put procedures in place to prevent that from happening.
Absolutely.
education and prevention.
Right.
Let's kind of dive into Safe Sport. So I know you are still on the board right now for Safe Sport, correct? Kind of just tell us what.
What is Safe Sport?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about Safe Sport and what.
Yeah, Safe Sport's an organization. Actually, it's been around. It's in concept. It started over 10 years ago, and interestingly, it was actually started by the United States Olympic Committee. They had an ethics officer, and one of their senior executives signed this ethics offer to start working on this concept of safe sports that would encourage, put rules in place for how coaches, athletes interact, and how they treat each other, and would have eventually it evolved into an independent organization, and the U.S. Olympic Committee, it's now U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee is the official name of it now. They eventually spun it off into an independent organization. So Safe Sport, again, was a germ of an idea at the Olympic Committee. They spun it out in, as I say, I think 2015-16, and this separate board was created of independent people. And they got people that were specialists in, child mistreatment, and there's a physician on there, a pediatric specialist, who specializes in childhood problems. Some people that have worked with the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, people that work with the Boys Club and Girls Clubs of America. That's the kind of people they look for who did misconduct investigations in those organizations.
And that's nice
And
to
the
see.
idea was to create rules for how athletes treat each other and how coaches treat athletes to prevent abuse in sport, and to have people to create a culture of fair treatment, equitable treatment, and if those things weren't carried out, an investigative arm to investigate those abuses in sport, whether it's sexual abuses or just harassment and bullying, what we call emotional and physical abuse, a coach slapping a kid around, or a bully on a team who's treating the younger kids or smaller kids badly. We wanted to have rules in education to teach them how to treat one another, and then also an investigative arm where if they didn't do that, there was a misconduct matter, an independent arm to come in and investigate it. Because, in the past, the sport would investigate itself.
Right.
And that works out well. That can work out well, I should say. But if you look at the big example, of course, is gymnastics. People have rightfully claimed gymnastics had these complaints about Dr. Nasser, and Dr. Nasser was a rock star in gymnastics, so they didn't investigate as aggressively as they should. And now you've learned, even the FBI has been accused of turning a blind eye to it.
Yeah, and stuff's coming out right now. Still, it's pretty crazy.
Exactly. So Safe Sport was created to avoid all that. Safe Sport is a completely independent organization. They have professional investigators, former FBI, former NCIS, former police officers, former investigators from universities. They have a really blue chip list of people that can investigate these cases and get to the bottom of them with no interference from the sport at all.
Wow.
And they make fair decisions. They do the investigation. They make a fair decision on behalf of what they call the respondent. The reporter and the respondent. So the reporter is someone that says, I've been the victim of ABC. The respondent is the person they're accusing of that.
And I was just going to ask you. Yeah, I was just going to ask you, same kind of thing. What would be the process of that? So if somebody is coming across some abuse, is it somebody else reporting it, or is it usually somebody calling, are they calling in, or how does that work?
So the
and how does the process
go?
Yeah, there's a number you can call, and there's a website. And so Safe Sport, all sports now, the athletes and the coaches and the administrators, everybody's required to take Safe Sport training. And they talk about, one, recognizing the signs of abuse, and then two, how to report that abuse if you see it happening. And so pretty much every athlete in the Olympic athlete in the country, and in the Olympic sports, there's something like 7 million participants. So every one of them that's under the aegis of the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee has taken the training and knows that Safe Sport is available to them.
Wow.
The challenge is Safe Sport had to build, like any organization, you have to build the trust of the athletes.
Right.
Some of them still, were a little slower accepting that they were truly independent, that they weren't really working on behalf of the sport or the U.S. Olympic Committee. So, building that trust has been a strong initiative for Safe Sport, and I think we've done a pretty good job. I think every year the number of athletes that, one, file complaints, and the two are aware of and take the training of Safe Sport grows and grows. So it's really become a remarkable organization. And they've investigated over 3,000 cases, and they've suspended well over 100 coaches. I'm not sure the exact how many is. I should have looked up my stats before I talked to you guys.
It's very close. I was looking at it right before. Very close to that. Yeah. I don't have them in front of me, but I was going to ask you on how often so you get about that many around per year. Would you say or daily? Are you saying are you getting like daily calls from?
No, they'll get sometimes 300 in 1 month. So they've investigated over 3,000. I forget how many total complaints they've had. It's probably on the website, but they have. There was a huge volume of cases. Now COVID slowed it down a little bit,
right?
Which was kind of good because it allowed the organization to catch up with all the investigations.
Okay.
Right.
Remember, they were starting from nothing. They started with like 2 employees and 4 employees. And how do you investigate 3,000 cases, with 4 employees? So they're now up. They have a full staff of maybe 100 people there.
Wow.
Close to 100 people.
Spread out
Some of them are in education. Some of them are in the investigation side. What they call the investigation side is called response side of the organization. And so they are the ones who actually go out and do the field investigations. And then the education side develops the training for all the coaches, athletes, parents, administrators, to make sure they understand the organization and what their obligations are as athletes, coaches, and administrators, but also what to do if they see problems.
Do they bring a lot of the questions, a lot of things that happen straight to the board, and then you guys decide, hey, look, we need to figure
No,
this.
in fact, that's the beauty of it. We get very few, if no details. The cases, it's completely confidential because they don't want us influencing anything either.
Right.
We are to run the organization from a financial standpoint, from a governance standpoint. So the role of the board is to make sure they're adequately funded, they're adequately staffed, and they're meeting their customers' expectations. That we're investigating these cases, but they don't come and brief us on these cases. We read about them in the papers like everybody else. We may get wind that there's a big investigation going on, but it's more less in the papers. The board generally doesn't hear about any of the investigations.
I just
Which
like
is a good thing.
Yeah, and I like the way you guys set up your board. I mean, I've seen I work with a lot of board members right now, and they just put random people on the board. Like, you should not be on the board, And in your case, you got somebody from each specialty, which I feel like is needed, and that's what a board should be. But you don't always see that.
We now have a woman from the. You should look up the board members. They're very impressive. We have a woman from the NFL now. One of the fellows that just retired from the original board members. He was a general in the U.S. Army, and he was in charge of the U.S. Army's elite athlete program. So they got a lot of expertise on this board to really make sure that we understood how to set up a governance program, and we were familiar with the subject matter. But we're not the subject matter experts. Those are the people on staff that actually do the investigations, and develop the training and deliver the training. And I think it's made a huge impact in the country. As they say, every athlete knows about it now. Knock wood, we'll never see another Nassar type case because we'd have gotten to it very, very early.
And you just don't see. You don't see. It amazes me how much. I'm trying to put it into words. It's a lot better because back then nobody really knew. I mean, nobody would say anything. Athletes didn't say anything because they don't know really. It's just like, oh well, it might be normal.
Right,
it's kind of just accepted.
And some of these cases are just embarrassed to come forward.
Right.
Yeah.
I saw Sugar Ray Leonard speak, and Sugar Ray Leonard, again, one of the toughest guys in the world, right?
Absolutely.
World champion for all those years. He was molested as like a 15-year-old boy by a coach in the front seat of a car. He talked about it publicly years later.
And it's funny, you never mention it until years later. Just like a lot of these guys, and it's nice to have a cup, like an organization like this where they can come out and not feel too pressured or anything like that.
Ostracized or feel like they're.
Especially look at Jerry Sandusky. Look the things he was convicted of. These kids, and a lot of these kids were from bad homes that Jerry Sandusky took advantage of. They're powerless. And here's this big deal. He was, a big deal defensive coordinator for Penn State. He got access to this great facility and all these big heroes that they would see on TV.
Yeah.
He took them to these fancy places and took them to games, and and then what are they going to do? Their 14-year-old kids are going to turn him in to who?
Yeah.
Right.
Especially from single parent homes, and so a lot of these kids didn't really have an option. Where to go. So now that's what Safe Sports trying to provide, that everybody is trained so that even if the parent isn't aware, the coach isn't aware, that somebody would be, a teammate. Since they've all taken the training, everyone's seen how to recognize red flags for abuse. And so they can all tell these people where to go get help. Or they can make a call themselves and say, I want to report this particular coach.
Which makes it better because now they're able to do that on their own, whereas before it's like you have to talk to your parents or somebody else about it back then, and that, like you said, it's sometimes it can be embarrassing. Sometimes they'll get involved eventually.
And you could see it's making a difference. Having the first active NFL gay player to come out, that's big. I think that starts, from all of the education and the knowledge of when abuse is being shown or being comfortable in your own skin or how
and how you treat each other,
and how you'll be perceived.
Who's going to call? Used to be the epithets that people would use for gay people. All your teammates, queers or fags.
Yep.
Well, how about this queer's an all-pro defensive end?
Right.
Exactly. Probably kick your ass. Yeah, for sure.
So you get that kind of people are starting to understand. Hey, they're no different than you or I.
Yep.
And it's no longer. It's not an insult. It shouldn't be an insult.
No.
To be gay,
based on someone's sexual preference.
Yeah.
So that's happily changing in the sports world, and I think Safe Sport is is helping create that environment where it's safe.
It's giving people
to be who you
confidence to
are.
do it, because people didn't have confidence to do that before, and now with different resources, I mean, I feel like it's just going to get easier and easier. And there's, I guarantee, so many more, not openly gay people, but it's just like a lot of other people that haven't come out yet, but are still. I mean, they're just waiting for that confidence, and this is definitely going to be something that helps with that. And
Yeah, even not just athletes. I think
Right.
people who watch sports. The typical consumer of sports. Will learn from these things as well. So I think it's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's what it's all about: transparency, honesty, treating people right. Hopefully, even the coaches who are probably some of the worst offenders
yeah,
with these slurs, they'll learn. And,
Yeah.
and it's almost just
Real
a
quick.
full change in culture,
Real quick.
yeah, get more civilized, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's all a good thing. I agree with you guys. It's really a good standard for sport to step up now and start recognizing these things.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah, sure.
definitely. Well, you got to do it now because I mean, like I said, I mean, the earlier the better. The more resources, the better. And it's only going to get better from here. I feel like. So,
Right.
no. Let's see.
So Regis, I feel like we've taken a lot of your time.
It's actually gone by really
it's
fast.
gone by really fast.
Really fast talking to you. You have so much, and I'm sure there's so much more we could talk about.
Kind of just want to talk about what are you doing these days? I know you retired a few years ago. What else you got
Yeah,
going on?
I still am on the Safe Sport board. I sit on the. Remember that Penn State campus that took a chance on me, and
Oh, yeah.
I sit on their advisory board.
Awesome.
The Nitleys gave you a chance. Huh?
I'm active at my law school. I try to stay active with the athletic department at Duquesne University. I'm a big fan there. And then, of course, I still bang away on the weights.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you
I still
that.
like to have fun banging away on the barbells. But yeah, my wife and I are happily retired, and life is good.
How many days a week you lifting?
Usually 2 or 3.
Nice.
Because I don't really do much bodybuilding. I try to do everything I do. I try to do heavy. I squat, and deadlift, and clean, and press, and I don't spend a lot of time doing bodybuilding stuff. So the exercises I do make me too sore to do it very often. So 2-3 days a week is probably 4 days a week would be a lot for me. Usually it's 3 is probably about the max.
You spend much time in San Diego area?
I have
Time
not.
in
A couple years
California?
ago, I did some consulting with SC San Diego.
Okay.
We did a consulting project with an ethics organization. And I had a good time. We were out there on campus 5 or 6 days, made a couple different trips out there. And it's just such a beautiful place. I enjoyed the heck out of it. We met the athletic director, spent some time with the chancellor and a lot of the senior people.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to see any games when I was there.
Oh, bummer.
So
Yeah, I was
maybe next time we get out.
Yeah.
I was asking
Is that where you
my
guys are from? You in San Diego?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
we're
in
from
San Diego
San
right now,
Diego.
or a little bit North County area. So we're about 30 minutes
Okay.
north of San Diego.
La Jolla, up La Jolla, toward La Jolla area?
A little farther past that.
Carlsbad.
That's it. Carlsbad, Oceanside.
Carlsbad, Oceanside. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
around that area.
Beautiful part of the world.
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right,
Love
well,
being here.
I do have one more question for you because I saw it somewhere. I can't remember where I saw it, but I know that you got to travel to a bunch of different schools. Is that one of the things that you really enjoyed, just kind of going around and seeing the different places?
Yeah, I didn't get to go to a lot of schools. As I said, we collaborate, we meet together and get together, but I didn't get to visit a ton of schools. I talked to a ton of schools, but unfortunately I didn't get on campus for too many of them.
Oh, okay.
So I've been around, here and there, obviously the Ohio State campus and
Yeah.
a few other places, but not a lot, not as many as I'd like to see, because college campuses are great. After working in the corporate world, you go to a chemical plant, you don't see any green for 2 days. You go to a campus, they're all well maintained, the facilities are gorgeous. Where'd you guys? You guys in school now, or did you go to school in that area?
I went to a couple different schools. I played baseball at San Diego City College.
Okay.
And then I went to Point Loma Nazarene, which if you haven't been there, go. It's
Yeah.
I mean literally beachfront property. I felt like I was at the beach every day.
Wow,
It was
that's
gorgeous,
awesome.
and that's in Ocean Beach.
Great.
Or Point Loma, actually. Point Loma Ocean Beach area.
What's the most
Nice.
beautiful campus you've been on?
Pepperdine's up there.
Pepperdine's
that's
gorgeous.
in our area.
I
That's right.
almost
Malibu.
went there.
Yeah,
I almost
Malibu.
went there. Yeah,
Hard to argue with Pepperdine.
Yeah. It's got the most beautiful
I'd have to
backdrop.
say that's probably the nicest. Although I'll tell you, West Point was pretty awesome.
West
Yeah,
Point.
oh,
looks
yeah.
cool.
West Point, they have a beautiful view down the Hudson River, and I'm just sort of overcome by the history of it. I just get choked up, and
The history
Air Force
kind of-
Academy I love, Colorado Springs, the Air Force Academy.
Yeah.
I love West Point up in New York. But in terms of just raw physical beauty, Pepperdine's a little hard. That might be my number one.
Check out Point Loma Nazarene when you get over there. If you ever come down here.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah,
It's gorgeous.
sounds great.
Yeah. But yeah, around there, and then I went to Cal State San Marcos right after that, which is right down here too.
Okay.
So I ended up graduating from there, and but yeah, I mean,
Yeah, great system. Cal has such a great system. You know, there's so many good schools out there.
oh, we had fun. Good people. Luckily, I had good coaches and things like that, so it definitely
That's
helped.
great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and also when you come out here, check out my girlfriend's father, Old Man Lifting on Instagram. He's a big bodybuilder.
is that right?
Yeah, Old Man Lifting is Frank Westall. Yeah, he's really big into powerlifting.
Frank
so.
Westfall.
Westall,
Westall.
Westall, ALL. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Regis, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. We got so much out of you.
Yeah, I know, and that probably went faster than any other. That really went flew by. It flew by. So we really appreciate it. That was
Thanks
a good
very much, guys.
conversation.
I very much enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be following up with you, so I'll shoot you an email soon, and then we can kind
Yeah,
of.
hopefully we can maybe have a second one of these.
Yeah.
Chat about this
Thank you
football
so much.
season coming up.
Great.
All right,
Thanks.
so